I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang's here, and we're off to Hong Kong, where Gordon, I believe there's a typhoon in progress. Is that correct?
There certainly is.
And when a typhoon blows into Hong Kong, does everybody stop and stare at it, or do they go about their business?
No, they certainly go indoors because this is worse than Irene.
Phelim Kine joins us from the typhoon-blessed Hong Kong. Phelim is Human Rights Watch in Hong Kong, and the issue here is illegals and legalizing them and disappearing people. What does that mean, Gordon, in China?
Well, in China, dissidents, all sorts of people, house Christians, they just sort of disappear. The government takes them, puts them into black jails, and they just are not seen for 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, forever. And clearly what's going on here is just atrocious. But the government wants to legitimize this.
Phelim, a very good morning to you in typhoon-plagued Hong Kong. Legalize how? What does that language mean in a country that doesn't have what you'd call courts and transparency?
Well, what the government is doing is they've announced a proposed revision to China's criminal procedure law. And the revision is basically they've said that they want to extend the powers of police to be able to legally detain or abduct an individual and put them in an unknown place for up to 6 months without access to a lawyer or without notifying their family. So essentially, they're putting this person into a legal black hole. Now, they say this is only for offenses related to terrorism, national security, and major corruption cases. But keep in mind, in China, national security laws are the widest, most ambiguous laws on the books. So it's extremely easy for anyone to sort of stumble into that territory.
Phelim, if we go back to the founding of the People's Republic 6 decades ago, we can see that China the Communist Party does not adhere to its own laws. I mean, so should we really pay any attention to what's going on? Is this significant? What does this tell us?
Gordon, it is significant because basically, as you say, rule of law in China doesn't really exist. It's ruled by law, by the ruling Chinese Communist Party. But the fact is that China has made progress in many ways with regards to its legal infrastructure. Things have gotten better in terms of many of the laws on the books. The danger of them, quote unquote, legalizing disappearances is it will automatically eliminate international pressure, the pressure of diplomats, international organizations to protest this, because basically people are going to put up their hands and say, look, this is China's sovereign right. This is a law on the books of the People's Republic of China. What can we say about it? So it's really important that this problem be flagged and that it be derailed before it actually gets integrated into law.
Phelim, you write of a lawyer, Gao Zhishang, who was representing some of the most difficult and brave cases in China, labor safety rights, for example. And he was just abducted in February of 2009. He just disappeared. Is that correct?
Just disappeared, was abducted by unknown state security agents, and his case is probably it is the most telling case of how sinister and dangerous this proposal to legalize disappearances can be. Because this gentleman has gone into this legal black hole. He emerged for a few days in April 2010, gave a few media interviews, and then disappeared again. His family doesn't know where he is. The government won't say where he is or if it has him. And it's a tragedy, and it's atrocious in terms of rule of law.
Phelim, it sounds what you're saying is that the government takes its own laws seriously. And I suppose the corresponding question is, do the Chinese people take these laws seriously? I suspect they do, but what do you think?
Well, what you find in China is that people do have faith in laws, and people do more and more. One of the most inspiring things about modern China is that Chinese people at every level are more and more aware of their rights under China's laws and are more and more active in asserting their claim to those rights. So, so what the government does, so the legal system is important. They see rule of law as something that's important. They see abuses of power as being damaging to them as both in terms of a society and as individuals. And they want the law to be respected. They want true rule of law.
So what we're talking about really is rights consciousness, that people are starting to take these laws seriously and use them against the government. And what's really interesting is that people did this at the end of the Qing dynasty as well.
There definitely seems to be a pattern of history repeating itself. And I think it's interesting in the sense of noting that if you look at how previous authoritarian regimes in Asia have evolved, if you look at South Korea, if you look at Taiwan under the authoritarian regime there, foreign assistance, foreign input, foreign criticism of the legal system and assistance in building an international standard legal infrastructure was really instrumental in allowing a fairly smooth transition to a functioning court system when the government changed. And so this shows you the value of continuing international pressure and contributions to China's legal system.
Phelim, we just have a minute. The question of this lawyer who disappeared. To your knowledge, has any significant figure in the West raised this in a meeting with a Chinese official, his disappearance and the abuse?
His name comes up regularly. Gao Zhisheng's name comes up regularly on lists of people of concern. But I know we're running out of time, but I'll just make the point that more and more, due to China's rising economic might and this perception, real or imagined, that China is going to save the world in terms of the economy, that governments are more and more soft-pedaling rights and concerned about rights of the Chinese government. And this is to the detriment of the Chinese people and to having sustained economic and bilateral diplomatic relations with China in the long term.
Phelim Kine, Human Rights Watch in Hong Kong, legalizing crime. That's what it is. It's a crime. And remember that old salt from Europe. If you don't say anything, you're the last to be taken. Gordon Chang, I'm John Batchelor.